One, this is the Nifty Alpha. I'm Pio. I'm here with my partner, sophisticated art speculator, also known as Captain Kix.eth. And I'm not mad at all that I just bought the absolute top on Smilesverse. Not pissed at all. Water under the bridge. We're good to go. We're going to make it. We're good. How's it going, sophisticated?
Going great. Proud of you for doing some tax loss harvesting there. That's going to help offset some of your other gains. But I'm right now currently feeling good, but I did just put in about $250,000 into the NFT market over the last 24 hours. So tomorrow I'll probably be feeling like a complete emotional mess. So we'll see if I'll be joining you in the Smilesverse upside down world.
Well, I hope I don't see you there because I wouldn't want you to have to join me here.
Appreciate
But
you.
today we're talking about the ultimate guide to buying Sandbox land. This is like a segment that I'm really excited to have. A lot of people have been asking about it. I think there's no better person, to discuss it than you. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, so just to, kind of just quickly cover kind of what like Sandbox is. So Sandbox is essentially like a Minecraft or a Roblox where they have this big world, this big map, and they divvied up the entire map into these little plots of land. And on these plots of land, you can build a place for your friends to hang out. You can build games that people can go play on. You could build a conference hall. You can do whatever you want. But it's voxel based building. And the game's you've been able to buy these for I think you could buy them last year. You could have bought some of the original plots. And we both know Matty DCL, who's a big Decentraland guy. So a lot of these people that got early in on land plays have made a ton of money. But long story short, this is a great, a lot of people like it as a great metaverse play. It's, the idea is that you're going to be able to buy these plots of land, either build something on it yourself, or there's going to be mechanics to lend or rent your land out to other people that want to use it. You can try to develop experiences and monetize it yourself. But this guide is specifically, or this video is going to be specifically on like how to buy land, not so much whether you should. If you want to buy, this video is going to help you buy land.
Sounds good. And so does all of the land buying happen on OpenSea on the secondary market?
Yes, they're looking to add more functionality to their website. I'm sure eventually you'll be able to buy on their website, but right now, almost all of the volume happens on OpenSea.
Okay. And so you have a lot of exposure to Sandbox land. Can you talk a little bit about when you started buying it, the indicators that, prompted you to start buying and just a little bit about your portfolio?
Yeah, so I bought relative to my net worth at the time, I bought a significant amount of Sandbox land back in late March. I had some friends that were bullish on it and told me about it. And just as a gamer, I kind of got the pitch. I'm like, this is cool. Like I can own these land plots and then develop them and do all sorts of different things on it. So I bought a good amount back in March, but the price really didn't move much from March until like August. And part of that is because not all of the land is sold. And like earlier in this year, they were releasing a lot of sand on the market or Sandbox land on the market. So, if there's a lot of new land coming on the market, it's hard for the price to really appreciate. But like they've now like tapered down the amount of land they're releasing over time. And then also, just the more like percentage of land is out there, then like the less the new drops really impact the price. But then the price of land started moving up in September and October, and then it absolutely exploded when Mark Zuckerberg rebranded to Meta and all of that. And also Sandbox is getting closer to releasing their alpha, and there's just a lot of positive catalysts coming their way. And so
Yeah.
when the Sandbox or when the Facebook Meta announcement came up, I heavily increased my exposure. I probably 3 or 4 times it.
And you also bought the sand token.
Yeah, so I bought the sand token first, flipped it for a lot of money, then took that money and then used it to buy a bunch of land, which then, moved up after that. And now sand, the currency, is staying pretty flat. as I think it kind of should. Maybe it'll do another run here, but the land is still selling at a very fast clip.
And so if someone was going to buy their first piece of land, is now a good time to actually get in?
What I like to say is that it's hard for me to make like a very, very strong recommendation when something's already moving, because I don't know how long it is going to move. I'd say if you're approaching it from just purely a flipping standpoint, like you want to get in and out of something in 2 or 3 weeks and try to make some money, it may not be the best opportunity. But I think on a longer term horizon, there's a lot of positive catalysts coming this way, because when the game comes out and it's fully developed and there's people playing on it, then there's going to be an actual need to monetize a lot of this land. And I think what you're going to eventually start seeing happening, literally 0 big US companies have bought land in Sandbox. But think about brands like Coca-Cola. Think about just all of these brands out there that are old school brands that are trying to stay hip and cool and relevant, right? When this game gets out there, there's going to be a real desire for like Coca-Cola probably to come in and build a Coca-Cola themed experience, right? And then they are kind of pseudo getting exposure to the trendy metaverse, and it's a good PR play and all this stuff. We still haven't seen that kind of stuff happen. We've definitely seen a lot of Web3 companies invest in it, but I do think that on a 6-month to maybe a year horizon, we're going to potentially get a surge of a surge of like big brands coming in, and that's going to help the popularity of the game and the price as well. And the other thing to factor in as well is if you look at some comparables, so Roblox, for example, they actually just announced they literally doubled their revenue for Q3. That's how much the game has
Crazy.
exploded, and that they are now worth $60 billion.
Yep.
If you value Sandbox land right now and its currency, Sandbox land is valued at about $4 billion. So if this game
Which is
was
still
able,
nuts. Think about how nuts that is. That like
it's
it's not a
nuts. It's
publicly
really,
traded company. Like that's so
it's
nuts.
nuts. It's nuts. I don't think it would be valued this high if it wasn't a crypto brand. But if you do the comparables, now there's a long road for Sandbox to get to the level of a Roblox. But if it could get there, then you're potentially looking at, a 5x maybe appreciation from here. But what will eventually happen is that there won't be huge price appreciation in the land. The value will come from how you utilize the land. And that's one thing that you should factor in when buying, or if you're buying and you intend to build something on it, or what you're trying to do, or if you're trying to build something for you and your friends, you'll probably take a different investment approach than if you're trying to like buy land that you think would appreciate in value and you could sell to someone else to develop. But basically, when you're looking for land, there's a couple of different factors involved. One is location, and there's some variables that impact that. 2 is um, like how like buying connected plots and things like that, or potentially buying a plot that's like inside of an estate. There's a lot of different things that you can do that we can dive into. And is that ASAP?
Yeah, so this plot looks like it's just neighboring. I didn't know that ASAP owns a 6x6 plot. Is that right?
Yeah, or just someone put his logo up on there. But yeah, so what you can see right here is anything that has a logo on it is at least a 3x3. And then the bigger ones, like you're showing the ASAP Rocky one, that's a 6x6. And then the bigger one to the right that's cut off, that's probably like a 24x24, one of the bigger plot sizes that you can get out there. But if you think about from a marketing, PR, branding perspective, I own a lot of 3x3 estates. Now they're not cheap. They're 50, 60 grand right now. But my thesis is like, if a Coca-Cola comes in, they're not going to want to buy one plot of land. They're doing it for marketing, PR exposure. They're going to want to be able to slap the Coca-Cola logo all over the map, right? So 3x3s, I think, will eventually appreciate from a speculative value much more than they are now. But if we're just looking at buying a 1x1, I don't think that this is a bad location. I would rather a 1x1 that's right next to a bigger plot than like if you moved like 2 spaces over to the left. You know what I mean? Where you're kind of just in the middle of nowhere. because there's some different variables in this game that you have to consider. So one is traveling. So essentially, how people travel through the land is they're able to use teleports. And what they're still a little vague on it, but what they've said is that you'll be able to teleport from big partner plots. So that's going to be like 24 by 24s, maybe the 6 by 6s, but probably the 20 by 24s. And then you'll also be able to teleport with like the sandbox estates, probably like the 3 by 3s. So if you're thinking about location, you want to be close to a really big partner plot, or you want to be close to a sandbox 3 by 3 that can be a portal, because basically if someone can hop in the portal and they only have to jump over like 2 spots to get to your land, that's close, versus like if someone's got to run through 10 or 12 lands to get to your spot, location wise, that's not as ideal.
That's like being right next to the subway.
Exactly. You want to be right next to the subway. You don't want to be a 10-minute walk after the subway, ideally. So that's something that you want to factor in as well. So we've talked about there's estates, and those have the visual value, so that's important. But like all, because like one thing you can think about, if you just want to buy a 1 by 1 or a 2 by 1 or a 2 by 2, how would you explain to someone where you're on the map? So if I'm right here, I'd say that you can't see it, but the thing cut off to the right, that's a Solana monkey business avatar, right? So what you would say is, you would say, I'm to the left of the Solana monkey business, right to the left of ASAP Rocky, right? That's super easy for someone to find on the map. They just look at Solana monkey business and they go to the left, right? Whereas if you're in the middle of nowhere, trying to like identify to someone where you are could be much harder to get to. And Jeff Izzle just asked, is the game fun to play? So the alpha for the game's coming out in December. That could spook some people and be like, wait, the game's not even out yet. But you can actually go into the game builder, and you can build on your land right now. And you can also like enter some experiences. And if you see the experiences, you can tell this game is super polished, ready to go. There's already like, the Gutter Cat gang did like a rave, and there was like 40 people partying in the rave. So I mean, they already have like player to player interoperability, lots of different things like squared away that that make me very confident that this isn't vaporware. Like if you run around in the game, you can see it's very polished, it's good to go. There's some like things like their play to earn mechanics and stuff like that that still have to be figured out. But if you want to swing over to the sandbox thing where we can look at the map, I think that would be pretty useful to people, just to get a bigger picture understanding of like the sandbox world.
Absolutely. And on the note that, there's going to be the alpha release in December, knowing the NFT space, I find that a lot of times when something is actually released and actually put out there, it can there are
Yes.
some situations where they sort of over deliver. It sounds like this might be a situation where it actually does perform like kind of at the level that exceeds expectations, which is essential. What probability do you think that it would have to sort of exceed expectations and be bullish for the price versus what we typically see in the NFT space where things turn bearish because of like a over promising and under delivering situation?
Yeah. So what I think is unique about this is that it's not like you can play the game and they're like talking about a new update and maybe the update is underwhelming. We're talking about people in mass being able to play the game for the first time. So if a lot of people are coming in, I'm like, oh my God, this is sick. This is the real deal. This is definitely going to be the next metaverse. That could be a very big bullish event. Also, if like there's way more people trying to play than like the alpha can support, that's bullish. And then also that could attract attention of whales, investors, big brands that are like, okay, this thing's getting ready to go. I may want to start accumulating. But now PO's on like the actual map, and you can, if you want to like zoom out just so they can see like the whole map potentially.
Here we go.
So you can really see like how big the game. Yeah. So when you zoom this far out, you can see where like location can really matter. So like one of the most like premium places to be is around Atari. You can just see Atari like smack in the middle. Right now over to the left, we can see that Solana monkey business location that we were looking at earlier. I don't know the
That's a
name.
big plot, huh?
That
Like
that's
that's
a
one of the biggest plots.
That's the biggest plot, yeah, that you can acquire. I think it's a 24 by 24. You can see Pranksy's tucked over to the top left. But now you can really visualize what I mean when, if you're trying to explain for someone to find your spot, if the easier it is to find it, the more valuable it's probably going to be. Like I have, if you see the guy with the top hat over on the right hand side, I have like 2 plots directly above them. So if I wanted to describe that to someone, I say, look for the old man in the bottom right hand corner. I'm like the 2 plots like right above his hat. Um, so like that kind of stuff matters. And now you can also see like all of the Sandbox land like owned by Sandbox is the Sandbox logo, right? And then all the big partner plots, like all of those are going to be portals. So like plots that are next to there, people are going to have to run through those to get to other places. And if you think about that, right, that's like, McDonald's being the first restaurant off of the exit on the interstate. You know what I mean? Like that's going to get the most traffic. And even if people want to go to Wendy's, if they see McDonald's first, maybe they say, screw it, I'm just going to hop in this line, right? So that's where location can be a big factor.
So when I look at this map, right, I see a few things. Atari seemed like I'd be curious, when did Atari acquire this land? Do you know?
They were one of the first people to partner with this project, is what I understand. So they got in way, way early on.
And then Pranksy, I'm assuming, got in very early.
Very early. Yeah. So what's absolutely bonkers is that I was looking at a guy who accumulated hundreds of plots last year, and he was buying 6x6s for $1,500 at the time, right?
Man.
He's selling those 6x6s for $250,000.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
this guy probably invested 20, 30 grand last year and is now up 3 million, 5 million. No big deal. Wappy had a great question. So can you keep buying and adding that into a 24 by onto that 24 by 24? So no, you can't make something bigger than a 24 by 24, but you can like accumulate plots around it and then just slap your logo on it. So you'll see some examples in some areas where like someone owns the 24 by 24, but then they also own like a couple 3x3s around it. So they have more real estate space. But what you can do is if you can get nine individual lands connected in a square, that would make a 3x3 estate. You can combine 3x3 individuals into an estate. So that's one thing I look to do at some points in time. The problem is it's really hard to do because in order for that to be a successful strategy, all 9 of those lands would have to be available at an affordable price. You know what I mean? And both of those variables lining up is pretty rare. You could do it more often back in the day, but now it's, increasingly harder.
The illiquid nature of NFTs, especially in a situation like this where you're literally talking about like latitudes and longitudes of digital land, is going to make it very difficult. One guy could be a jerk and just say, yeah,
One
this
guy could be
plot
a
right
jerk.
here is, very expensive. One other question I have is I didn't know, for example, that Solana Monkey Business had such a massive plot there on the left, as big of a plot. It's a 24 by 24. It's as big of a plot as you can have.
Well, and I'm not even sure if that's official Solana Monkey Business or if that's just a rich whale that owns that and then just slap that in on the logo, because you can put whatever you want to be as your logo. And some of the 24 by 24s were just auctioned off, especially earlier on. They weren't just partner spots. But that, and if you click on it, then there'll be like a little pop up on your right hand side that will say something about it. So it could actually be official. I'm not sure based on what the text says. Yeah, so that looks official. So that looks like it's theirs.
Okay. Why is it official? Just because it says like Solana Monkey Business here?
Yeah, and it's like Solana 5,000 inspired generative. It sounds like, versus someone that was just using the logo and maybe be like, hey, I'm building a cool game here,
Sure. And the fact that they basically have as big of a plot as you can possibly have. And then if we look at this map, right, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like basically call it 15 24 by 24 plots, period. Right. And unless they sell it, they own that. Does this almost back Solana Monkey Business as a project to some degree because they literally bought this land?
Yeah, that's the kind of interesting network effect. It like works both ways. Basically, like every project that like buys into this kind of validates Sandbox, and then
Sure.
conversely, like big brands that buy into it, they also get a lift from like owning a lot of Sandbox land, especially if it's, you know, an exciting project and they do something cool with it. So like Bored Ape Yacht Club bought a section of the map. I think they're up north. If you scroll up all the way to the top,
I think I see it. Is it a big plot or smaller?
it's big. It's all the way up at the top.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're getting closer.
And that was like an early thing that they did, right?
I want to say they did it. Yeah, so you can see like these ones. I don't even know if those are official Bored Ape Yacht Club. They just may be people that, you know, slap their logo on it. Yeah, I'm not sure where it's sitting, but if you go over to the right, you can see like Metakey did one. CyberKong's is over there on the left. And so what's interesting is that, you know, sometimes what happens when these projects like buy a plot, then like all the people in the community want to buy the plots around it and all kind of like hang out in the same area. So that can be like a location play as well, is if you think like, hey, Bored Ape Yacht Club's going to the absolute moon, maybe I want to buy land in their area because maybe that land will appreciate better than just any plot out there. Like I'm sure certain areas of the map, and we're already seeing that to some extent, but certain areas of the map will probably be valued, you know, more than other areas of the map based on a lot of traffic goes there, or based on like there's a high desire for that land.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting when you start to get to it, and it looks like Sandbox owns so many plots themselves. Will they
Exactly.
sell those? Are they holding on to those? How's that going to work?
So they're going to hold on to those. That's one of the interesting things, is like there's 160,000 total lands out there. But if you just look at the map, Sandbox is probably owning, let's call it 30%. No, let's call it 25%. So they own like 40,000 of the land. So there's really only 120,000 lands out there that like other people can buy. So Sandbox is going to build like cool hangout places. Probably these are going to be portals. It's going to, you know, they're going to do something cool with the land for sure. But yeah, so like buying, like thinking about where people may go on the map, where people may frequent on the map, that is a good thing that you want to consider when you're buying. Like if you're thinking, hey, Atari, you know, they're probably going to build a really cool experience on the Atari plot, so a lot of traffic's going to be there, so maybe I want to buy nearby. And for a long period of time, land really kind of, it just traded based on its relative value, meaning that like 1x1s all kind of traded at the same value, 3x3s all kind of traded at the same value. But what's been happening recently is I've been seeing a price divergence on areas. You know, a 3x3 around Atari goes for about 20 Ethereum. A 3x3 anywhere in the map probably goes for 12 or 13 right now. I've seen individual plots of land near Atari go for 5 ETH just for one plot, whereas like the floor right now is 1.5. Yeah, it's nuts. But you can start to see how people are adjusting strategically. How I've approached it, and it, once again, this all depends on your strategy, how much you have to invest, your risk exposure. But I've always enjoyed collecting connected plots versus just like random 1x1s all over the place. Because my like thesis is that if these plots are meant to be built on, right, and you like the value of the land is getting more people to experience things on your land, then a lot of builds out there to build a cool experience, you're going to need a couple of plots instead of just like a 1x1. So that's why I really like 3x3 estates. That's also why like I have a bunch of 2x1s, right? I have a bunch of connected 2x1s. Because my thought process is if like a gaming guild comes in or something like that, they're going to want a 2x1 or a 2x2. If they can't afford a 3x3, they're just going to want a little bit more land to work with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you got to be spot on with that. Like, even though I have limited knowledge of Sandbox, you have to think that more is better. And when you factor in what we were talking about before about how, because these are illiquid, JPEG assets, basically, the
Yep.
odds of getting several that are right next to each other, especially at this point, maybe a year ago when that person that you were talking about was racking them up, for $1,500 for 3x3 plots, that's one thing. But now with the amount of liquidity that's been put into the market, the amount of buyers, right, unique owners at
Over
this
time,
point,
it's going to be harder to get the connected plots. Yeah.
just harder and harder and harder. And so I'd imagine that you pay a premium for buying a 3x3 plot as a package, correct?
Yeah. So I basically, when the Sandbox started ripping in late October, early November, I immediately went and I scooped up like 6 2x1s for 1.1 ETH each. And now those trade for like 3 ETH each.
Yeah, I was going to say that
Um,
sounds so cheap. That sounds so
yeah,
cheap.
I got a and but here's like another play. So like I found a guy that he listed 2 2x1s right next to each other. So I scoop both of them up. Now I can repackage that and sell that as a 2x2. Like someone can have like a square to build with. Um, Another thing that's important to keep in mind is that in the game, and they may change this, but I'm pretty sure in the game, and this makes sense, the biggest you can build is 3x3. But you can build any variation. So you can do within a 3x3. So you can build an experience that's just a 1x1. You can build a 3x1. You can build a 3x2, but you can't build like a 6x1 in the game. Like I'm talking about like in the game maker. You can't build 6 vertical plots of land. You'd have to break the 3x1s up into 2 different experiences. Or you could still make it a linear progressing thing, but they would just like load out of one game instance like into the second 3x1. Is there any way to filter 3x3 plots when scrolling through OpenSea? Paulo, great question. So one of the things, and what's very interesting, is that still to this day, connected plots don't trade at much, if any, of a premium to the current 1x1 price. And I think partially is because a lot of people don't even know how to find the bundles. So on OpenSea, what you have to do, and Pio's pulling this up, you can see where it says single items, right? Drop down menu, single items. If you click that, it's on the right side by the search bar, to the right of the search bar. Single items, you click down, you go to bundles, right? And so then that's going to show you only the bundles, but then there's a lot of land assets within that. So then on the left-hand navigation, you want to look for type. On the left-hand navigation under change is type, and then click land. So now you're just looking at bundles of land. And then what you can do is in the search bar, you can type 3x3. And so then that'll show you 3x3 bundles.
So
and some people will lie to you.
Well, I was going to say the floor on 3x3 is 3.75. That doesn't seem right.
No, yeah. So this person probably said like, so he says, fantastic 2-land estate on Beast Quest 12x12, 3x3. It's just in the keyword. Right. So the real actual floor is right there, 24x24. So the current floor for 3x3s is 13 Ethereum. But like just
oh my God.
Yeah. But just to give you like a quick location thing. So I wouldn't buy that one. I would pay an ETH and a half to do the one on the right. Because once again, what do you see on the right location? Actually, I don't know. But on the right, what you can see is there's a little bit more development going on. There's 2 Sandbox plots nearby, and then there's the big top hat guy, which is a 24x24. Or wait, no, that's a 12x12. 3, 6, 9, 12. Yeah, that's a 12x12. But like, for example, here we go. Like the 14.91, it says complete 3x3 estate south of Atari Zone. But you see, it's just green. It's just a wall of green. There's no development around it whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
And imagine trying to get to that with portals. You'd have to portal to and just run through a ton of land to get to that spot in the middle of nowhere. And you can see there's no development going on in that area. So that's not really super attractive for me. But then you can do the same exercise. You can type in like 2x1 if you want and like show what the 2x1s are trading at. Alexander, great question. So you can't teleport to any spot. Currently, what they say in their white paper is that you can teleport to partner plots and then Sandbox plots. Now, Sandbox has 1x1s. They have a lot more 1x1s trickled around. Like if you see the second image in, right? You can see a bunch of Sandbox big grids, and then you can see all those tiny blue dots. There is some question that maybe all of the Sandbox 1x1s will be portals too. If that is true, then it's going to open up a lot of accessibility to the map. But I think initially probably it's just going to be bigger Sandbox plots will have portals, and then partner plots would have portals. So you'd want to be like you don't have to be closer to those, but like those may command a premium at one point in time. But like right now you can see that the 2x1 floor is 3.2. So it's actually starting to sell at a slight premium to land, because land's going for like 1.4 right now. So 2 lands would be 2.8. So it's trading at like a 0.4 premium. But you can already see how the supply on the connected plots is starting to tighten up, and we're starting to see that price divergence. But what you can do is you can type in the search bars, you can type in the longitude and latitude of lands. So what you can do is if you find like a 1x1 out there for 1.4, yeah, I haven't used that XY. I think that's ranges. That is one way to do it. Like if you're trying to buy in a zone, you could say like, I want like between 60 and 90 latitude and 40 and 80 longitude. But you can also type in like 126, comma minus 80, and like see if that land's available. So like there may be some opportunities out there where there's 1x1s and you can connect them into a 2x1 for cheaper than buying like an actual listed 2x1 out there potentially.
And that's more work, right? That's more work.
Exactly.
And you're going to have to look for it, but that's why you're able to get that versus just buying the bundle for a 2x1, right? And these bundles, I think, are just going to get more and more. Pretty soon, bundles are, I'd imagine, going to be the premium thing, because there's going to be so many unique owners that have one plot of land. Just having 2 plots right next to each other is going to be very valuable.
Exactly. And so that's been my working thesis all the way back from March. I never really wanted to connect. Now, but here's the thing. If you're saying, hey, I want to build a 1x1 plot because I just want to have fun building, and this thing could keep appreciating in value, more exposure, I think that's a fine strategy. So then if you're just looking for 1x1s, like if you have 5 that are the same price, just put your thinking hat on and say, out of these 5, which one of these is probably the best location, right? And then there's other theories that you can have as well. So another very exciting thing is that Sandbox has said that they're going to allow decentralized autonomous organizations to be structured on top of Sandbox for a multitude of things. So one is like on the right-hand corner, you can see maybe that there's like you see how there's like that 6x6 that it says coffee house on it. Like you see all of those are like 3x3 plots. Those all could actually connect into a bigger estate DAO, and then the DAO is almost like an HOA in a sense. Like you can have governance that like allows them. Isn't it insane, right? You can have governance that allows them to work collaboratively. So one thing to consider is like, hey, even if I only get a 1x1, if I get it in the right spot where maybe like 8 of my neighbors want to turn it into an estate together under a DAO, then even though I only own a 1x1, we can all collaborate, combine into a 3x3 estate, get a nice logo on the map, you know what I mean? And then have like this collaborative value added and like, kind of create an overarching brand. So that's one thing that, is possible to do as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, the DAO thing, I think, is very appropriate for this because, like you said, it's almost like an HOA, and it gives people unique ownership of assets, or the ability to kind of put forward their unique ownership of assets, and just a way to organize it in a way, like in a not risky kind of structure. I mean, the whole HOA thing, the way that these ads are basically listed, like how it's like 2x1 premium next to Sandbox, 2x1 Genesis near Roller Coaster Tycoon. I feel like I'm on Craigslist looking for a new apartment in New York City right now. It's so funny.
And that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually something that's really interesting to consider when you're trying to sell land, is you are kind of like a real estate agent. I'm not
literally,
I'm not saying lie to people, but what I'm saying is, if you just list it and you're like, yeah, if you're just like 2x1 plot in the middle of nowhere, not as exciting. If you say 2x1 plot next to a estate, 2x1 plot next to a Sandbox portal, like that kind of stuff close to
Near
Portal,
Bored Ape
exactly.
Yacht Club.
Near
Boom.
Bored Ape Yacht, that kind of stuff is going to make maybe your listing seem more appealing than the others. Also, you want to think about keyword optimization. What are people typing into the search bar? So like I'll give away this alpha, but like some people search 2x1, other people search 1x2, but most people, 95% of people list their 2x1s as 2x1s. They don't even put 1x2 in the keyword. So scroll up to the top and type in 1x2 instead of 2x1. So there was 27 results for 2x1. There's 4 results for 1x2. So just think of someone out there that just, instead of typing 2x1, they type in 1x2. You could literally slot, your 1x2 as like 4 ETH, and it looks relatively more attractive than everything else. But like thinking of those, like that keyword optimization when you're trying to sell, and you can see how like some people are smart about it. Like these two guys here said 1x2, 2x1. So these guys
They're
understand,
touching both, both search
both ends
terms.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on with this. I guess, could you see any situation where we have a major correction in this, or are we just so damn early on it and still undergoing price discovery and just figuring out what this stuff is worth? That you think that we're either going to trade sideways or continue to appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, we've already pretty much tripled in price in like 2 or 3 weeks. So, like, to imagine that it just straight triples from here, like, I have less conviction in saying that than when it was point 0.5. I had very high conviction that it was going to go on a run. But Schwaz, he sometimes goes on our Twitter Spaces. He's active in a lot of the Discords that I am. Really cool guy. But he actually did this fascinating analysis, because right now Decentraland trades at a 2.5 ETH floor. Sandbox trades at a 1.5 ETH floor. But if you look at the building space that you get per plot in Sandbox, it's like 10 times as big as Decentraland. So what he said is he wanted to build like a conference hall or like a stadium. And in order to do that in Decentraland, he was going to have to buy a 2x2 plot. It would have cost him like 50 grand. He could build the entire stadium on a 1x1 plot in Sandbox, which costs him 7 or 8 grand. So, there's interesting value props that could, and also if you look at Roblox and how Roblox works as like an economy and all of these different things, I think Sandbox lines up like really nicely with that kind of economy. And I'm telling you, look at the footage. Like, this isn't vaporware. If you look at, like, literally, I watched a live stream of Gutter Cat Gang like partying as like a group of 60 inside this like awesome DJ like club setup, and it looked fun and badass, and they had 50 people in there at the same time. So I mean, this technology is there. They just raised an $80 million Series B, and let me tell you the people that invested in it. SoftBank led the round. Logitech invested. Samsung, in like you just list off like big tech companies all invested in the round. And it's one of those things where we talk about momentum creates momentum, network effects, compound network effects. Basically, the more big brands and in NFT projects and Web3 companies, the more that of them that bet on Sandbox, it creates an effect that makes it more likely that that's going to be the one that wins, and then that the next group of people looking to get into the metaverse will pick that one.
And I'm so glad that you shifted to that, because that was kind of the last thing I wanted to touch on, is like, for someone that's an outsider, I have no exposure to land. I don't own Sand token. I really haven't studied this sector of the NFT market that much. The first thing that came to mind to me is like, well, I already own digital land. It's called Bitcoin. Like,
Yep.
Bitcoiners have this like, mentality that Bitcoin is digital real estate.
Yep.
But then you hear about Sandbox, you hear about Decentraland. I think, okay, I got it. It's digital land, actual digital land. That's cool. But you start to wonder why one of those two versus someone that can just pop up and take it away. So I think of first mover advantage, and that's super important. But then I think about the kind of validity that's given to them as more of these brands and as more notable buyers kind of buy in and build on Sandbox. So would you say that at this point, Sandbox is here to, I mean, the amount of money they just raised says it all. Like, who's the competitor that's going to, all of a sudden have the resources to compete?
Yeah, I think that Sandbox has solidified itself as a very high likelihood of winning. I think Decentraland has solidified itself as a high likelihood of winning. I do think a lot of the competitors that are coming into the metaverse compete more against Decentraland, which is like a true kind of Grand Theft Auto metaverse, versus Sandbox, which has components of that, but also has game components like Minecraft and Roblox. And building an actual functional metaverse is very, very hard. It takes a lot of money, a lot of engineering. So any other company that's starting now, they're 2 years behind Decentraland, or they're 3 or 4 years behind Decentraland's development, 2 years behind Sandbox development, with probably way less funding, right? And then what you also have to factor in is, in order for another metaverse to win, it would have to be so obscenely better than Sandbox or Decentraland that you would convince all of the people that have invested in that to defect,
leave,
which is going to hurt their investments to go into your metaverse, right? Like for me, I have a huge amount in Sandbox. If a competitor came out, I'm going to FUD the shit out of that competitor. You know what I mean? Because I have a vested interest in Sandbox working at this part, you know? And I've said the same thing about like NFT games, like Axie Infinity. There's so many people in Axie Infinity that have a financial vested interest in Axie Infinity succeeding, that if you just make an Axie Infinity clone, they're not going to be like, oh, this one's marginally better, let me dump my $100,000 of Axie Infinity and like blindly ape into this other game. So like that winner network effect like makes sense. Like no one has beaten Twitter at what Twitter does. No one has beaten Facebook at what Facebook does. No one's going to beat TikTok at what TikTok is. The only way for, in my opinion, for a new metaverse to win is either they have an obscene amount of funding like Facebook, or they carve out their own niche in the space that's different.
That doesn't compete with this though, right? It doesn't compete with that new niche.
Exactly. Like, okay, I'm not trying to, like, imagine like an adults only metaverse where it's like gambling, strip clubs, like like
an only a virtual OnlyFans or something like that, which will happen 100%.
Exactly. Like that would be like a niche play that could like fit into the ecosystem and like not compete with Sandbox or, you know, Decentraland and you know, could,
yeah, I don't think the Sandbox Series B investors are looking for Sandbox to be a you know, an OnlyFans type of play. So,
well, here's the thing, and you know, Christian says, yeah, but if a AAA giant arrives with a metaverse with all of their billions and bring all of their collabs and context along, they could quickly jump way ahead of Sandbox. Now, I'm not saying that that's not true, but if you look at most AAA games coming out there, how often are they releasing an actual new game, and how often are they releasing a new version of an existing game? Look at Activision, right? What's the new game that's came out of Activision? I'll wait, because it's Call of Duty every 2 years, a different kind of Call of Duty.
Right?
Yeah, every 2 years they come out, but it's a different Call of Duty. So for like Activision to be like, we're just going to build a completely new thing, for a AAA company, from when they start that, it's going to take 2 years for them to get it out the gate. You know what I mean? And then at that point, now Sandbox has had 4 years of movement. So not to say that these other AAA studios can't get it to work, but AAA studios, they move slow. A lot of these companies are still sitting on their hands waiting for regulatory clarification. So these early, you know, movers are going to potentially, like, you know, win out. I also think that a lot of the AAA games, they're good at making games. They're not necessarily good at NFTs. You have to be good at games in NFTs. What we're going to see is we're going to see a lot of AAA games release really cool games, call them NFT metaverse plays, but they just don't functionally, they're not functionally structured properly to like work from an NFT perspective. Having with what Christian said, there's other people with lots of money out there, but I would be more worried about a Facebook. Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg's been in VR for 3 years. If you look at their financial reports, 20% to 30% of all Facebook employees are working on Oculus Rift and the metaverse.
Nuts.
Literally, and they've been doing that for 3 years. And
it's
they just literally
multi-trillion-dollar company.
And it's a multi-trillion-dollar company, and they just literally rebranded their name to make like metaverse. Like, they're going to win, in my opinion, versus AAA games. I don't think, like, yeah, like a Blizzard could make like a metaverse World of Warcraft, but I think a lot of the game companies are going to be focused on NFT games, and those will almost plug into these metaverses. Where, like, for example, Fortnite may have a plot of land in Sandbox, and you can go there and do cool things. But then also there's like a portal where then you can zip into the actual Fortnite metaverse, right? Like I think the real winners are going to be like interoperable synergies.
Yeah, I mean, and just to like you just gave a very detailed and thorough response. Just to kind of explain it simply, the thesis that we've been talking about quite a bit is basically that you have to be NFT native, at least to some capacity, to have real success in this space, unless you're just some sort of crazy outlier. But those crazy outliers become NFT native. So Gary Vee wasn't technically NFT native, but because he approached everything flawlessly, VeeFriends was a massive success. He plugged in and he understood the NFT space. And there you go. He becomes NFT native at this point. Sandbox is NFT native. I think what Captain Kix here, sophisticated art speculator, is saying is that at the end of the day, yes, these AAA studios, yes, these bigger companies can have this kind of firepower to be able to plug in, throw money at a problem and try to develop it. But like we just saw with Habbo avatars, like we're seeing with so many different NFT projects.
Neopets on Solana right now, they don't know what
it,
they're
it
doing with NFTs. They just see the money.
they see the money. I mean, we're having meetings, like the Nifty Alpha's having meetings with people that understand that there's money in the NFT space, understand that they need to get in, but you can tell that they're kind of at the surface, whereas everyone watching this video and the participants of this video are just have so much more level of depth. So I feel like that's what Sandbox is versus these other companies. Then you think about Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, you think about the resources that they have. This is not a video game studio. This is like the fifth biggest company in the world, or whatever rank Facebook is in the entire world, with 3 years of VR under their belt. And I didn't know that 30% of Facebook was working on Oculus. That's pretty nuts.
It's insane. It's insane. And yeah, I think that like because there's so many different things of what a metaverse can be. When I think about companies like Facebook, I consider them, like, Facebook wants to be the center of Ready Player One. If Mark is thinking about this properly, they want to be the center of Ready Player One, where you log in with your Facebook ID. There's like businesses that like work in the metaverse. You show up to your virtual office, you say hi to your coworkers and stuff like that. You do your stuff in there, but then you run and you load into Sandbox like through their portal. And if you see what like Oculus's strategy is, it's very much like that. They're the hub, and then you can plug into all of these different games. So I think that like metaverse isn't Facebook metaverse isn't going to compete with Sandbox. It's going to be network like compatible. Patrick said, what about Rockstar, who makes Grand Theft Auto? If they did this, that would blow up the internet. I completely agree. I love Grand Theft Auto Online. I think it's absolutely fantastic. If there was any AAA game studio that could like make a really good metaverse game, like Grand Theft Auto would be like a great synergy there. But it's more than just building the metaverse. It has to work from an NFT perspective. And made it like PO was like the first one that I heard say this. Non-native NFT brands, at least with the current track record, continually struggle to fully understand how to build properly. So there's going to be a lot of challenges for those types of companies. They know how to make a great game, but you can make a great game and then the NFTs within it can just not make sense, So, but I'm still bullish that basically everything is going to eventually switch to be at least metaverse compatible, is what I'll say, because all of the ones that don't are going to be flat-footed and not have any network synergies. But I still think all of these AAA studios, they're so far behind. And the reason why I know they're so far behind is because you have to look at the order of events. Steam came out and said, we don't want NFT games on our platform. Epic came out a week later and said, we're taking the opposite stance. We want to be NFT compatible. Then you saw every single big company out there all of a sudden say, like, we're doing stuff in the metaverse. It was like literally in line. It was like EA announcement, Microsoft announcement, Sony announcement. Like, they were all in line. Here's the thing. I've worked in business long enough. All of them were caught flat-footed, and you can't hop on an investor call when people are asking you about this new hot thing, and you're like, we got no idea what that's about. Exactly. Basically, what they did is they heard metaverse. They call their exec team and they're like, guys, we need to figure this out. This is what everyone wants. And then they hop on their investor call and be like, yeah, we're exploring the metaverse. We're really excited about it. And it's on our roadmap. Like, that's literally what happened. So I think that very few AAA games have even taken this seriously. The innovative ones have, but it's not going to be like a year from now, every AAA game has this like functional metaverse that they've magically been building for the last 2 years. A lot of them are currently flat-footed.
Yeah, I saw Dropbox recently had an announcement that said that they were gearing up for the metaverse, and it's just like funny. These are just like tech companies. Like every single tech
Hey man,
company is suddenly saying,
can you send that NFT to my Dropbox link, please?
or something, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I totally agree. It's apparent that Silicon Valley is completely flat-footed. When you have conversations with some of these Silicon Valley folks, when they ask you questions, they almost like ask you questions to try to like show you that they're qualified to have the conversation about NFTs. But it would kind of be like if I, showed up at like, I think there was a comparison, the oil at like an oil plant or whatever, like an oil rig, and just being like, yeah, so you're gonna take the oil out of the ground here, right? And the people are gonna be like, yeah, dude, like, have you ever showed up to something like this before? So it's really interesting to see, you know, an interest from outside of the NFT space in the NFT space and not quite understanding how to enter properly. And I'm just seeing more people in real life from me text me things like, I think you're onto something with this like crypto thing, or I think you're onto something with this NFT thing. It's like, yeah, I'm on to like the next wave of technology that's going to literally change the world. I'd say so, you know?
Exactly. Um, Xavier says CS:GO knives are the perfect example of how gaming NFTs should be built and implemented. Xavier, I couldn't agree with you more. My partner at Crypto Raiders, we both played the crap out of CS:GO, and he actually built a CS:GO like gambling skin website at one point in time. So like they were ahead of the game on uh with like the CS:GO knives and stuff like that. But like ironically enough, they kind of curtailed that stuff because they were afraid of regulatory concerns. And that's what's going to really hold back a lot of these AAA companies because they're sitting on a ton of investor money. They don't want SEC attention. So they're like sitting on their hands, which is delaying them even more.
I mean, look, there's a lot to talk about with this. I think that this was a great start,
Great
almost
start.
an hour right on this. Everybody, we appreciate you watching.
And give a shout out to
Definitely.
Pio. This is his third live stream of the day. The dude's absolutely grinding. So if you want to support me, you want to support Pio, subscribe to the channel, like the video, get in our Discord, and keep an eye out for Alpha Portal, which is a project that we're working on that we're very excited about. It's literally Nick, Pio, and I. I think if there's anyone that you can trust that's going to grind, build a good project, and try to make it succeed, it's going to be us three. So keep an eye out for that. There'll be more details on the horizon. But shout out to Pio, taking his Saturday. He could be doing things that he loves, but guess what? This is what we love, and that's why he's here on his third video of the day.
Absolutely. And plus, I needed something to take my mind off the fact that I chose to pay 0.85 for Smilesverse instead of 0.15 a few days ago. I guess I just liked that price more. You know, it's like, yeah, I could buy
You
it for
did say you're going to
0.15
buy
right
up
now.
to 1 ETH, and you held true to that. So
I held true. I didn't buy for 1.5 ETH, but everybody, please like the video. Just take a quick second to like the video. That makes a huge difference. And we appreciate all the viewers that we have right now. If we could just get you guys to like the video, that'd be sick. And I'm assuming everyone here is in the Discord, but if you're not, pop in the Discord. You can hop on the whitelist for Alpha Portal. It's going to be 0.033 ETH. So I think, in my opinion, it's worth a gamble considering we're literally working here on a Saturday for this stuff, and it's not going to stop. It's only going to get worse, and it's just going to consume more and more of my personal life and my relationships. So everybody, thank you so much for watching the show. Shout out to Captain Kix. I'm just worried that people are going to watch this video in a few months and you're not going to be Captain Kix anymore. And people are going to be like, how do I find this Sandbox genius on Twitter? And they're not going to be able to find you. Sophisticated Art Speculator is his name.
Yes. I'm liking Captain Kix more than Kix. So there is a higher chance that this is going to stick. We'll see. Sophisticated Art Speculator is a mouthful. You know, Kix is a little easier off the tongue, you know, and I really need to pump that .eth domain so I can sell it for $1 million one day.
Ridiculous. Thank you everyone for watching. Catch you guys next time.